Hello and welcome to episode 138 of our SAP on Azure video podcast. Today is April 6th, and together with Robert and Goran, we're here to talk about anything related to SAP and Microsoft. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Good morning.
OpenAI, ChatGPT, Copilot, Dalee, Azure OpenAI are currently mentioned almost everywhere. I've not yet looked at the Gartner hype cycle for this, but I think it is safe to say that we are currently on the top on the way for the peak of inflated expectations. In the midst of all of these settings, we see some strange and completely useless scenarios, but we actually also see some gems popping up. Especially in the area of SAP and OpenAI, we see some cool use cases from partners, from the community and customers. So for today's show, I'm happy to have CJ joining us. He has been working on a nice integration scenario that shows some of the ideas and potential scenarios that you can do when connecting SAP with some large language models like OpenAI. But as always, before we hand over to him, let me actually quickly share some news of this week. And Goran, let's start with the Azure Firewall announcement.
The Azure Firewall. Well, there are some really interesting enhancements in the Azure Firewall, which is also, used or can be used in the SAP context. Those enhancements actually help to troubleshoot the network performance and traffic visibility of the Azure Firewall itself. So one of the stuff is the latency probe metric. Of the firewall, always kind of important. So here, in an easy way, you can get that kind of metrics. And the other two is if you would just scroll down, the flow trace log. So basically, this is something like those stuff. Quite a detailed view what is actually going on, acknowledging between the two communication, and also on the last one, it's what is called the top flow. So basically, it's the firewall can there are two versions, standard and premium. Standard can go 30 gigabits and premium 100. So basically, exactly, it will identify the top traversing through the firewall, helping also to see the bottlenecks if they would happening, and see the performance actually of the firewall itself. So quite, maybe it looks a small one, but generally quite useful metric for those folks who would use the Azure Firewall. The next one, we were also mentioning in the past Premium SSD v2 for the HANA, SAP HANA. Quite important part on the storage, and also for the HANA. Small but important update on the documentation about the block sizes. If you would search for the important part about 4,000, a little bit below. It's below. Just a second. Where is this? Exactly important. So here, this part, it's important. There is a possibility to define the sector size 512 bytes or 4096. So generally, we say all the tests we did it for the certification were with 4096. So that should be set. There are millions of best practices, and honestly, it's sometimes quite difficult for the customer to track them. But this is an important one, so I thought, okay, all of those changes are happening frequently. From time to time, just to light it up, because these kind of setup are important for the performance of overall HANA and storage itself. Yeah.
Cool. Do you know if the quality check tool also checks?
Need to check it, but I would, we need to check it, but I hope it should be updated with these parts as well. Yeah,
cool,
definitely.
Well, interesting. Thank you. So with this, let's move on to the higher level scenarios, and just yesterday or the day before, there was the Microsoft Business Applications launch event. I actually wasn't aware, but this is apparently the 4th year or something like that this is happening. So where Charles Lamanna and the team, they're talking about news in Dynamics, but also in Power Platform. And as you can expect, there's a lot of things around AI. So it's a 1-hour session where Charles Lamanna guides you through the recent announcements. And I can tell you, it's just amazing. I mean, I was amazed when I saw Microsoft 365 and Copilot, and I think we at Microsoft we now also have really access to Copilot for Microsoft 365, and it's just amazing. I mean, this will change. I'm pretty sure this will change the way how you work with PowerPoint, with Excel, with Word, with Outlook going forward, and it's really great to see what is also now implemented in Dynamics. But I mean, from my point of view, obviously, from my position, much more interesting what's also happening in the Power Platform there. And I can definitely see how this will also impact how the Power Platform can interact with SAP. So if you have an hour, or there are a few also. Well, there should be. Here, there's the bonus content. So there's additional content there where they also talk about where they have some deep dive sessions on. It's not loading for whatever, but deep dive sessions also on the Power Platform integration and a few others. So definitely check this out. Now, speaking of AI and OpenAI and all these integrations, actually, the German-speaking SAP user group is in the process of starting a new working group about OpenAI and SAP. So I think that's also really interesting that DSAG sees that this is one of the next waves. And I mean, we'll hear from CJ in a minute some of these scenarios, but yeah, this is really something where the German-speaking SAP user group is focusing on, where we'll have some webinars, but then where we really want to collaborate with customers, with partners on these different use cases. And actually, as a preparation for this, I have asked on Twitter and similarly also on LinkedIn to get some experience, some really first-hand experience from customers on or partners or individuals on their usage of Copilot or GitHub Copilot or ChatGPT in the context of SAP. And I already got a lot of feedback here on Twitter, similarly on LinkedIn. I asked a similar question, and I had already a few calls with some partners, with some freelancers, and I'm currently in the process of collecting this. Obviously, with the goal to make this available in this DSAG forum, but I will definitely also create a blog post or something out of this to make sure that we can really get this discussion around OpenAI and SAP going, because there's so much happening at the moment, and I think this will be really, really amazing. Now, when we look at integration, there's a new concept or group, the Logic Apps Aviators. So obviously focusing on Logic Apps, but in general on integration topics. And there was just this newsletter for April, and one of the blog posts that was highlighted was also one that talks about also integrating OpenAI. But this one was the one that I wanted to highlight, the using Logic App standards to connect to SAP. And here, Siddharth created a blog post that outlines how you can use the SAP connector from Logic App using the SAP.NET connector, obviously. So this is something that you need to download from with your S user. But then how you can use Logic App Standard to really use the SAP connector to connect to RFCs, BAPIs directly from Logic App. So I thought that was also a really nice brief, but nice article that talks about how to use Logic App with SAP. Then the Developer Insights Survey from SAP was published. So I think end of last year, there was this survey triggered off, and roughly 2,500 respondents from across the world. So if you scroll down here, you can see India, Germany, and the US had the main respondents. So really a fairly good representation, I would say. And there are some interesting findings. I mean, most of them are developers that replied. Not surprisingly, ABAP is the most used language here in the SAP community, followed by JavaScript and Java. But I mean, I think, yeah, obviously everyone working with SAP has heard about ABAP, is probably using ABAP, and now with Fiori, with the Cloud Appliance Programming Model CAP, obviously JavaScript is also very popular. So I think no surprises there. And when you look at the business technology platform environments, I thought it was also interesting. Cloud Foundry, BTP Cloud Foundry is the most used at the moment, followed by the ABAP environment. But then Kima is on the rise. I mean, a lot of customers are aware of this and planning to use it, but the adoption is not fantastic at the moment. And Neo, so the original from SAP Cloud Platform or HANA Cloud Platform, as it was called before, that's also still very much around. And I mean, yeah, there's still usage. But obviously, I think SAP also really mentioned this up here. Neo is deprecated for some time now, so it is supported, but obviously, ideally, customers would also migrate away from Neo to Cloud Foundry or Kima or something like that. Yeah, there are a few other interesting findings here. One last thing that I want to highlight is low-code, no-code tools. So there is definitely an increase, an increase of the interest by customers for low-code usage, and yeah, that's obviously something that we see everywhere at the moment. And actually, we just had the Power Platform and SAP Roadshow here in Germany, where we also saw tremendous feedback from customers. A lot of customers talk to us about how can they use the Power Platform in the context with SAP. So I think there's really no surprise in this increase of low-code tools. One last thing, and basically just a segue to the last topic, is here the use of GitHub. So GitHub is being used by a lot of customers. A lot of developers are actually already contributing to code via GitHub. And along these lines, I found this GitHub Codespaces for students and educators. So I think we had Martin Pankratz sometimes back on the show who talked about GitHub Codespaces, which is basically this Visual Studio Code in the browser, but with pre-configured add-ins, with pre-configured scenarios. We talked about how GitHub themselves are using Codespaces to provide ready configured development environments for their developers. And what the cool thing is for students, you can use this for free. I mean, to a certain extent. So Codespaces is free for 120 hours for personal accounts, but for 180 hours, so this pro account for students somewhere. So you can sign up here. Yeah, here pricing for students, which is really cool, and I can only recommend to test it out, because if you know how time consuming setting up your development environment can be, and now with a click of a button you have this GitHub Codespaces in a browser, and you can start developing in not yet in ABAP, or maybe actually, well, there are some ABAP plugins as well for Visual Studio Code, but if you're doing JavaScript or Java development, I can definitely recommend to check this out. I think this is really powerful. Good. So with this, enough from the news from this week. CJ, maybe before we go into your scenario and show what you have done, maybe you can quickly introduce yourself, what are you doing at Microsoft, and then I'm really interested to see the demo and the slides that you have prepared.
All right, thank you very much, indeed, Holger and Gogan. Good morning to you once again. My name is Chan Jin. I do all of my folks from SAP, Microsoft call me as a CJ, which I don't mind. So I'm part of the SAP on Azure in APAC team, so based out of the Singapore. So due to that, the strategic location here in Singapore, so we're helping that barriers like a customer's deal, where we helping that RISE or native yes throughout that the pre-sales engagement. We also myself helping that the barriers like a post sales, where we saying that helping the project implementation. Also we helping that barriers like integration, which here SAP on Azure team here in APAC, we also highlighting that high priority of the extended innovation. So starting from the pub level integration, which Holger has been mentioning, also data integration, which is another topic.
Yes.
And lastly, we have got huge demanding from the ground field in our custom partner. So how are we gonna bring that the OpenAI in a furthermore Azure OpenAI will be able to the SAP. So my job is mainly helping that demo, changing their requirement as a feasible, tangible asset, such as a quick POC. So this is how I enjoying here in Microsoft in Singapore.
Perfect, great. Well, it's fantastic to have you. As mentioned, I saw I think your LinkedIn post where you talked about some of the work that you're doing there with the OpenAI, and I thought that was really fantastic. And I think you also got a lot of very positive feedback already, not only from Microsoft and SAP colleagues, but really from a lot of customers and partners as well.
Yes, indeed. I think probably later I can quickly go through that. Yeah, the PowerPoint deck with a quick demo. I think SAP on Azure team's point of view, like with help from the GBB. So we always looking for that. What's the real use cases? What our customer and partner is looking for it. So I think they are mostly the quick idea would that be let me quickly sharing that things of what I have been sharing to my customer. So now, like this is what we starting our conversation with our SAP customer. Okay, so from the Microsoft, we are working with OpenAI. So major portion now, like I need to change is a GPT-4. Okay, GPT-4. We have got Codex, we have got Dalee. I mean, a lot of features coming within, also in the ChatGPT as well. Okay. When we talk about OpenAI with the Microsoft, so this is what we have been highlighting to our customer. So this is the idea of prompt engineering, where you type in that your human like, and then the OpenAI like the GPT-3 or 4, Codex, Dalee, ChatGPT will be giving that answer rather than a lot of information. This is a differentiation between that previous like a search by was the answer. When I think these are the difference between that dedicated model GPT-4, Codex, Dalee, ChatGPT are quite acceptable from our customer in the partner. I think when it comes with that the Azure AI services, actually, so how the Microsoft, so we're taking that OpenAI services into the actual scenario. And then this is what we have been seeing from our customer in actually requirement from our the customer. So what are the top 4 capabilities, use cases that can starting with? Starting from the content generation, summarization, code generation, and lastly, the semantic search. Then we brought up the idea in all our latest update to the customer. Then customers is asking from the SAP customer point of view, hey, CJ in the Microsoft team, okay, now I've got a lot of the study. I mean, a lot of people talking about the OpenAI in Azure. Now I can see that Microsoft, they are the only hyperscaler providing that enterprise scale level of the OpenAI services, which we give it a thumbs up. And then, but I want to really deep down that I've got my SAP, like it can be a RISE or it can be a native ES, like what is the idea of, use cases? I can starting that, POC or ideation, building that, getting a benefit of the Azure OpenAI into my SAP, where I see that my SAP data, like we call the transactional data, cannot be published, cannot be queried by the ChatGPT in OpenAI.
Yes.
Okay? So this is a definitely concern. So what I've been sharing with my customers that be yes. Definitely from the Microsoft point of view, from the enterprise customer point of view, I don't expect you sharing that your own code in ask for the OpenAI, all your computer information. This is a surely no. Okay, so this is not supposed to. However, from the SAP on the Azure team point of view, what we can share with that, so we will be sharing that a couple of the use cases which you can start from the simple idea of how you're gonna building that your own OpenAI model using that your SAP HANA. Either it can be RISE or native in ECC. So this is how we're starting the conversation. So first use cases which I brought up our customers that actually the integration with the teams and using that the OpenAI Codex model, whereas this is one of the great feature where you are able to converting that your natural language inquiry into the SQL. Okay, so there are barriers like actually the GitHub Codex actually using that Codex model, and then you are able to executing the S/4HANA. So let's say that the idea would that be, let's say the Paul is in charge of oversee purchase manager. Then he is love to having that Teams integration as a daily life. So within Teams, he is able to log on to web query, and then he is always in mind that hey, we do have SAP BW report, or we running the SAC report. However, this BW report more or less we call the fixed query. So based on how you're building that your BW query, it shows that things what it's supposed to do, not what we're looking for the dynamic query. So idea would that be what if like within the teams, if I entering that total gross number of purchase particular purchase ID, and then OpenAI understanding that this is a natural language inquiry and running the query in dynamically into my S/4HANA backend, it brings us the response. So this is a great way. So you're trying to get the real response. The overall build flow, which I have been sharing my customer, my demo as well. Let's say that we're taking the natural language, okay? And what is the total amount? And then what I've been done, I've been using that as a function, then using that Codex model. Here got the Codex device user 2. So it will be taking the prompt from here, and then it will be changing by the SQL query. Okay, so simply it is a generating the SQL query. And then in order to get the real data from my S/4HANA system, so I've been using that HDB ODBC connection. So using that Python connection tool. So here you see that connection, Python ODBC. So I'm actually log on to the S/4HANA system in the database. Okay.
So basically you are doing HANA SQL scripts, not the ABAP.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I'm using the I have not trained for the ABAP developer program, so
okay,
I still
okay. That's the next step, right? But great.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So I think I have been struggling that hey, I mean from the SAP expert point of view, I mean using that the direct DB access, which is customers asking, hey, CJ, using that these are the ODBC directly, shall I need my enterprise full license or the runtime is sufficient? Okay, so this is one of our favorite topic. But however, in order to show us the flow, so we are able to actually get the response from the database. So at these use cases, I simply using that the ODBC connection throughout the HANA database is directly. So I'm using that the native SQL query rather than ABAP application layers in a CDS, etc.
But then, basically, I'm just thinking is you're executing here on the S/4HANA system. However, you could execute on any HANA database, so to say, meaning you could put in any different SAP system using HANA database or just HANA database used for whatever different purposes as well.
Yeah, so I mean, it doesn't matter like this is a matter with that depends on how you want to generate in the SQL query. Either second part of which I have been using that historical data. So I think in order to avoiding that native database query, so I've been using that Azure Data Factory, then using the Synapse, I actually uploading all the table as a historical data, and then I made it another query. That's another way. However, the point is that it depends on the how information, what are the actual SQL queries that need to be run. So there is a various way you are able to using that connection. Okay. And then the next step, what have been done is that I'm actually pulling the result in the creation of the JSON. Okay, and then at the bottom side, you will see that the JSON has been respond. And then from the JSON point of view, so there are various ways you are able to sending that result into Teams as well. Either you can using the something called in Microsoft Teams, so we are providing the something called Teams webhook URL. Okay, so once you have got this Teams web URL, we are able to redirecting that the JSON basis response directly in the Teams channel throughout the HTTP response. Okay, this is one of the simple flow. I have been sharing my idea. Okay, let's start think a simple story. You have got idea of you have got your databases. It can be HANA, still SQL or Oracle. Depends on how you want to deploying your data out of this your SAP system. So we are able to using that the Codex API from our OpenAI. So we are able to running that the SQL query. So this is one of the quick idea how we have been starting that my journey with the Azure OpenAI with SAP. Okay, so this is a simple way of the Azure function code. So where I've been running the query. So then it actually generating the SQL queries. Of course, this is like the another debug level, which I normally share. I'm not sharing with the customer, but actually it is running that generating the SQL query, and then it has been executed successfully. And then next thing is that the favorite part of the Power Automate, so where I got the help from the Holga. So then I creating the very simple Power Automated flow. So when we have got new message, let's say within my Teams channel, and then it will be triggered that the HTTP request and the passing the JSON to here, and then it will be returning that same response into the same channel. So this is what I've been thinking as the local no code, trying to not be touching the code as much as possible as not possible. So here's the result. So basically, this is the URL which I'm using the webhook. Okay, so then once you have got this webhook, my response actually I'm asking, so what is the total gross amount of the purchase order I did, blah blah blah, and then webhook URL is actually generating that HTTP response, which is JSON basis, passing to my Teams web channel where I have got creation of my channel under my demo channel. So this is one of the idea of how you are able to running the very simple natural language query, converting it to SQL, and then executing that in HANA databases, passing by the JSON. It really bring to the Teams channel where you starting the conversation. Okay,
and I think this is really absolutely amazing. Not that this is a scenario that I would use immediately in production. Probably not. But the way how you put these bits and pieces together and how you're really showing, look, with using OpenAI, with using Codex in this specific case, with using natural language recognition, then extracting the relevant information, then doing a simple SQL query, and then using something like Power Automate to create a message into Teams. I mean, now we have all these building blocks put together, and now it's just the next step to take these building blocks and then really build something that I can use in production that is really bringing a lot of value for me and for my company. So I think that's for me this really beautiful scenario that you have now all the bits and pieces in place. You can inspire customers and partners on this, and they can go now and take these building blocks and create their very own integrations. So I think that's what I really loved about this scenario.
All right, thanks, Holga. So I think the this is what I show was that the validation where on the left hand side. So actually, so I'm getting the exact amount of gross amount because I'm actually make the same query. So I think this is like what the Holger you mentioned, that this is not true. I also strongly agree with you. Don't running that the HDB ODBC direct query in the HANA database, but this is a great starting point of, you can think about how the natural language query can be interpreted by the Codex and bring us that the result what you want to run with the low code, no code. Then it comes to the team. So this is my starting point here. Then once I starting this conversation, I do have so many feedback from my colleague, my customer partner. Hey, CJ, your idea looks good, but can you go next step? Okay, so this is what my customers are asking, my colleagues asking. They want to go see more. So I took it a second step. So where I want to using that, more vertical data with the historical data. Okay, so where I naming that something called conversation analytics. I think the idea would that be, so let's say that my previous use cases was that I was using that single SQL query. But however, let's say the customer, they do want to see that real-time insight, probably historical their sales order, purchase order. They also having the, hey, my BBAG one, my sales order, purchase order. I want to see that those are the real-time data from the my S/4HANA table. With that, my previous historical data where I haven't got from the last couple of years, can I joining that those at the table with the single places? Then am I able to running that various query where I mean placing them by prediction rather than go to the dedicated BW report? Can I dynamically running that my query and then can figure out that whether is there any missing opportunity of my purchasing, or is there any inefficiency of my purchase order? So this is something like what I have been thinking in. So my next idea, what I have been done. So basically, I took it the further step, like what Holger you mentioned there. So I taking that the simple two table from our EPM and standard table of SNWB purchase order in the sales order from the S/4HANA. And then I do have the same data set. However, I do sort of like the helping that making the combining of the historical data, sales order and purchase order. Actually, it came from the same data source. Then I've been generating the CSV file where considering that another data source. Okay. So what I've been done, so I'm using the Azure Data Factory. I actually running the transformation of these two different sources and storing the data lake. Okay. And then what I've been done, so I'm using the Synapse, triggering that data movement pipeline where I'm able to replicate that real-time data from the S/4HANA, and also this CSV more or less fixed. Okay, so then it is creating that dedicated SQL databases in my Synapse, and then I creating that something called order view joint view where I've been combining that those are the table and the historical data as a view. Okay. And then what have been in the next step? So basically, this is my single data source where I'm able to running all my Azure function query. So then simply what I've been done. So I've been creating that data query. So it can be data. I mean, you can storing that those are the view file. Direct query with the Synapse also possible. Well, if you prefer that, the Azure blob, yes, you can creating that another copy of those view file into the Azure blob, and then am I able to running that in a query? And same thing what have been done for previous night. Then the passing the user query, and then the extract available information. So at this time, so I've been using that Azure OpenAI services. Okay, so as you can see, so I've got my dedicated deployment services where I've been using that ChatGPT-35 in October, which is one of the latest engine. And then in order to helping that picking up the intent, so I've been using that NLP library, the Space K. So this is what I've been using that as a second scenario. So yeah, so this is the view of the Azure Synapse. Actually, as you can see, I do creating that dedicated table for the CSV in table file. Then I've been creating the join view. So then you are able to see that all the information when I've been creating that. So simply view comes with that in order type, seller ID, seller name, etc. And so this is area of where I'm able to running that query. So this is another simple Azure function. So this is one of the my bigger challenges, like to generating codes. Of course, I'm not a dedicated developer, so I got a lot of help for GitHub Copilot, GPT. So this is where we actually using the GPT-35 turbo engine. So it is actually generating all the necessary query. So this is what have been done.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so this is a screenshot of actually the queries which I'm run. So I've been running that these queries actually give us that from the query point of view. So you can see that actually it's a combine of the total gross amount and the count order. So it comes with that actual amounts. This is what I'm looking for. So this is how I've been creating the query. And then, so let's say that this is how it looked like. So let me quickly see that. So this is some of the query which I have been preparing that. Let's say that instead of typing, I'm sorry, just do the copy and paste. Okay, so I just copying that. So which company placed that highest total gross amount of the orders? Okay.
And so,
yeah, and then you actually generating that. So company with the highest gross order is the JCO. And also, yeah, I mean, some of like a very generic query. Let's say that what are the company? Yes. Same thing. And I also asking, so let's say that JCO, what are the? Yeah. So as you can see,
cool.
Yeah, comparing the use case one, so this is more or less I expanding that what I was aiming for the dynamic query, but however, I got a lot of challenges which I mentioned that my blog. So it has been a lot of the manual effort. So let's say that the way how we're interpreting is that this is I have been called as a dynamic query. So where it has been my data source is actually here. So this is my data source. I do expecting that user can be combine that various like combination of the SQL query, not only for the order ID, so they can combining that sales order ID with the buy seller. They can creating the very complex set, the query, because this is expecting the prompt. This is expecting dynamic query. So however, the challenge would that be the model what I've been using the GPT 3.35 Turbo. So this is a general the ChatGPT basis model where that's not the what we call trained by that converting the direct SQL query, which is not possible. So also, if I expanding the Codex, the model where I've been using the use case one, but those are the SQL query can be generating. But however, you have to make sure that those are queries actually accepted by the SAP HANA one by one. Okay. So otherwise, like the way how they taking the SQL query from the HANA, so they are not able to running the possible query. So this is what I've been sharing that my data in AI team. So yes, it's okay. I think Plural looks very promising. So this is what my data in AI team also here. And this is looks fine. So I think this is good to go for the more enterprise side. So where they are able to taking their own data. And then they are using that Azure function app, so which means that this is a strictly the restrict by the enterprise use. And then those are Azure function, it will be controlled by the RBAC, which means that this is not the exposure for the public. And then those are the function app only run throughout that my destination, my target is actually run by that Azure chatbot, which it is also controlling the another security area, so which means that we don't have to worry about that. These are the ChatGPT is actually meant to be running that enterprise ChatGPT, where I'm only running that SAP channel. So this is aim to be is good. However, my challenge would that be, how do I using that? Which model? Like, is it Codex is a right to running the dynamics query, or shall I purchasing that, continuing using that, the GPT-1, where we've got a lot of challenges not understanding correctly dynamic query. Okay, this is what I've been building that here, 2 use cases, which I'm still looking for that. What is the best way, combining that my use case 1 and 2, making the perfect scenario?
But honestly, I really love also the second use case, because what we see right now with a lot of customers, I think, is that they are starting with their data lake strategy, that they are extracting or combining data from the SAP system in an Azure data lake, that they're putting other data in this one central place. Basically, what you did here almost manually with Azure Data Factory, and now you have this one table, this one view that has all this data. And and this is the situation with a lot of customers at the moment, that they have this data pool. And now what I really like about your scenario is that you just combine the existing data with something like here the OpenAI functionality, which enables the end user to ask a natural question. Then you can extract the relevant information and use this to query your data lake, so to say. I mean, again, in your specific case, just this order view, but then extract relevant information. And I think this is just, as I said, this is just the beginning. And we'll see more and more of these scenarios where you have the existing data sets, and now you can leverage this data, because in a lot of cases, I think customers really just started to collect the data. Let's just dump it in the data lake, and then we'll figure out what to do with it at a later point in time. And I think now we are at this later point in time where we can unleash OpenAI to query this information, to really benefit from all this data that is now available in this one single place. And I think that's where we'll see more and more of these and similar beautiful scenarios, that the data all of a sudden is much more accessible to the end user.
Yeah. So I think indeed, so now like I've got more or less like a good acceptance of the use cases 1 and 2. So when I open that in my challenges, I mean, to running that enterprise, I mean, SAP is like enterprise, okay? So you have to return in the exact amount of transaction from the databases. Any mistake of the number, which will be causing that unnecessarily, the purchase order extra. So I think I've been asking that some of my data team, AI team. So also I've been reaching out to my previous SAP developer back in my home, and then they've been asking, hey CJ, why don't you exploring that something called OData? So I think this is one of the step what I've been doing in that. I think what the SAP team they've been asking. So instead of so I think this case is actually I'm talking about the same SNWP, the purchase order and the sales order. So what they've been asking, we do have like OData, okay, from the S4HANA. Okay, so then when you pull in this OData, so we have got various options. Let's say, okay, so let me quickly, what they've been asking. So let's say, yeah, so let's say that this is like the ES5. So let's say once I adding the product ID in here, so we are able to get the response. Let's say this is JSON. Okay, then what they've been suggesting that, hey, why don't you be taking the OData? Let's say that if a number of the purchase order ID, sales order is getting longer and longer, and then rather than go through the steps of what I have been created in here. Okay, so they've been asking from the functional app, why don't you pull in directly from the OData in S4 throughout the XAP? So let's say that this is what they've been saying is that creation of, basically here, so as you can see, I can patch the data directly, okay, from the OData, and I'm giving that in my OData user ID password, and then and after that, so I have been defined something called the product data. Then I'm able to restrict the process product data which I want to see. Okay. Yeah. Then after that, I'm able to running that something called another my query, and then they say that this is going to be one of the quick option. So what you have been struggling between the use case 1 and use case 2. So Olga and Gordon, if you got any idea whether the OData can be another option, please let me know. I'm happy to building the cases for everyone.
Cool. No, I like this evolution that you're now doing the next step and looking at fetching the data then via OData. I think I mean, I'm a huge fan of the OData protocol and how to query data. So it sounds like a really cool next step for your integration.
Yeah, indeed. So I think the challenge would that be I'm the SAP basis consultant, so I don't have the deep knowledge of how to code. So this is what I've got a lot of help of my this is actually GPT Copilot where I've got the preview access. So I've got a lot of help with the generating the code in Access. So however,
cool.
Yeah. So this is indeed I got a lot of the help. Okay, so this is a majority of my code has been generated through the GitHub Copilot, and then I'm sure that these are the using that OData, patching the product data. After that, I bring the get data, and then I'm running that another query throughout that my ChatGPT. See whether I can generating that, overcome the challenges what I have. Okay, yeah.
Nice.
So this is what I have been recently held. Doing my work, and I've got a lot of the good feedback, a lot of the challenges, especially in the coding side. So, however, from the SAP Innovation team point of view, I'm pretty much here enjoying that, building the solution. So, out of box approach, particularly, I love the how the build deploy works. This is a purely like what you mentioned that. The current landscape, what my SAP on Azure customer they are the heading right now. So I'm hoping that as long as we are able to helping that this functional app, bring the right result in this part. So I think this is the one of the biggest success in SAP on Azure team. So we will get a lot of the huge success in our SAP customer on the Microsoft.
Yeah. Cool.
Perfect. Well, CJ, thank you so much for walking us through your two examples, and I think from the responses that you got from the community already, from customers and partners, I think it's very clear that you are on the perfect track. I think you inspired a lot of customers already on what they can do, and I think a lot of partners also jumped on this and are extending these scenarios. So I think you're spot on. So thank you so much for sharing all of this with us in today's episode here.
All right, indeed, and thank you very much. Okay, so once again, please let me know. So once you've got great idea using the OData, particularly, Gordon. So if you got any of the good way how we are able to running the dynamic query in our SAP enterprise transactional data without any single mistake of the SQL query, I'm happy to sharing that further step what I'm going to do.
Sounds perfect.
Great.
Okay, great. With this, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm looking forward to the next steps, and maybe we can work on this on the OData piece as well. So yeah, thanks again, and looking forward to seeing what comes next.
All right, once again, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Have a good Good Friday.
Yeah, thank you everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.